Tonight on the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror, this group of high schoolers are having a house party. However, someone was BYOM. Bring your own murder. Tonight's movie, Night Screams.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror! Yeah! Triskaidekaphilia! And tonight, we are going to review a slasher film, an 80s slasher film that I want to review because I think the story around the movie is kind of interesting and sort of has a tie-in to a movie that we reviewed not too long ago here on the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror. So let's get into it. And the movie I am talking about is Night Screams. Night Screams, not to be confused with Death Screams, which was a movie we did a little bit back on this series, 31 Nights of Halloween Horror. Anyway, so Night Screams. So what is Night Screams about? Well, it starts off with a couple that are watching a horror movie on television and they get killed by what we think is their child because like, no honey, don't, and then plays chopsticks on the piano. Fast forward, we have a doctor who is giving a sort of a recording of his opinions on a patient, saying that the patient is ready for social interactions and being out in the world just as long as they take their medication. So, where we go now is to a high school, and it's the basic kind of high school thing. We got the sports jocks, you've got the main football guy who's got a scholarship for, I believe, Oklahoma, and a proud family, and he is going to throw a party for his friends and their girlfriends and whatnot to celebrate the coming end of the year, the graduation, all of them kind of moving on with their lives. And at the same time, there happens to be a couple escaped convicts that have caused a bit of mayhem and decide that, oh, this guy's house, their basement, would be the perfect place to hide until the heat cools off, which is kind of actually silly because after killing a couple police officers, I'm pretty sure they're just going to search all the houses. So basement or not, you're hiding in one spot seems like a bad play. Anyways, so, of course, you know, this guy's going to have the party. His parents are conveniently going to be out on the town, so they're going to be away. And, oh yeah, it also happens that this jock, he's got a condition where he has to take medication or else bad things happen. Weird. Where did I hear something like that about? So anyways, surprise, surprise, when the high schoolers show up for the party, they start getting murdered one by one. And of course, we've got plenty of fingers to point at plenty of suspects. So, who's the killer? Is it the jock who needs his medication? Is it the not really ex-cons, they're still cons, the escaped cons in the basement? Or is it some other entity, party, whatever, doing the murking, so to speak? So let's get into those scores, shall we? And there's going to be kind of two tiers here. But only for two of the things that I'm going to score, because there are actually two versions of this movie. You have the original theatrical cut of the movie, which is on the 4K disc, but Vinegar Syndrome, awesome guys, did a cut of the movie that is as close to what was originally intended by the filmmakers. Because one of the issues they had is when they made the film originally, it was too short for distribution. They needed more scenes, and apparently, instead of like doing extensive reshooting and adding new scenes, they decided it was much cheaper to put in scenes from a handful of other movies. One of those movies was Graduation Day. Yes, so when I first watched this and watching the first scene, all of a sudden I'm like, this is the scene from Graduation Day where the gymnast, A, gets naked, and then B, gets, stabbed through the throat. And I'm going like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you see this couple watching television, and you hear, it's like, we'll be back to our feature presentation, Graduation Day, in a moment. And I'm like, wow, okay. So they're watching Graduation Day. Okay, this makes much more sense. That's fine. Also, what network television channel allows them to watch to show graphic violence and nudity? I don't know. I must have missed that channel. But anyways, so yeah, in the 4K theatrical cut, there are scenes from other movies used to sort of pad the runtime on this movie, and the Vinegar Syndrome cut has those removed, and so the movie plays a little differently because of that. And for certain aspects of my scoring, there's going to be two scores, one for the original theatrical and one for the, I guess, the intended cut. And because I watched both of them, because curious to see how they work out. So let's get to those scores, shall we? Violence and gore stays the same for the most part. Look, there's an added, you get the throat scene. That's added to it, but I don't think that's enough to change the score. It's a 3 out of 5 for me. The signature kill, which is the grill kill, was the highlight of the movie. It was brutal and it was nasty. Some of the kills, though, were not so great. We did get like a hatchet in the head, and the diner shootout was surprisingly violent and surprisingly bloody. I mean, I didn't know that punch packed that much power into it. But so 3 out of 5. Moving on to shock value. There might be a case to be said that there may be a difference based on some of the added scenes in there, but I'm going to kind of just gloss over that because it's more of a jarring thing than a shocking thing. This is a 1 out of 5. They try to do some jump scares. It doesn't really work. The shocks really kind of like in the one kill scene and the twist ending, which wasn't all that great. So 1 out of 5. Moving on to plot, and this is the biggest problem with the movie. And unfortunately, because of the way the movie, the history of this movie is, it's kind of hard for me to imagine them fixing this issue without having to basically reshoot a bunch of scenes and do a lot of other things. Because it's the problem with the subplot with the I always want to call them ex-cons, but escaped convicts. Their scenes are just, outside of the kind of entertaining shootout at the diner, their scenes are horrible. They add nothing to this movie. And it's frustrating when we spend minutes with these guys because it's just awful. It is just awful. They were a mistake from the beginning, and understandably you can't cut them out of the movie because it's even shorter, but it just doesn't really add. I know what they were trying to do. Like, they tried to make it so that, it's the the escaped convicts that are doing the killing, but it's obvious that they're not. They only kill one of the people, I think, in there. Maybe they got a second, but I think mostly they killed one of the party goers. So it just doesn't work. And the characters are bland and uninspiring. And I know they try to give nuance to the leader of that group, but it just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me, and it makes it a mess of a movie. And so, 2 out of 5. Moving on to acting, I'm giving this a 2 out of 5. If it wasn't for the bad acting in the beginning, because oh my goodness, just honey, no, oh God, I need to report a murder, police. Probably would have gotten a 2.5 out of 5. There's enough decent acting going on, especially with the main group of high schoolers, but it's really mediocre outside of that. So yeah, 2 out of 5. So moving on to Nudity. So here's the first divergence in scores. With the added scenes, and pretty much all the added scenes have nudity. So it's a 2.5 out of 5 with the added scenes. And honestly, I'll get to this in the enjoyment factor. But yeah, all those scenes, nudity, just they're in them. And so I kind of see why they added these scenes in, because the intended cut has 0 out of 5, even though there's ample opportunity. I mean, we do have like a love scene, a kind of jacuzzi scene, a sauna scene. It's non-existent in this cut. And yeah, so 0 out of 5 there. So 2.5, 0 out of 5. So moving on to enjoyment factor, and here's where I'm going to start explaining a lot more things. So with the scenes, I'm giving this a 3 out of 5. Without the scenes, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5, and here's the reason why. So for the most part, outside of the sauna scene where they just inexplicably add cuts of a movie where a woman is showering and taking her sweet time cleaning her boobs. Like, that is the only time where I felt that the cut-ins didn't really do anything with the movie and sort of detracted from the movie, took you out of the movie, didn't make sense. The ones before that completely made sense and actually kind of gives it a more realistic feel, in my opinion. The intercuts of graduation day when the couple are watching it on television, you know, it kind of gives us the lived in real world experience. It's like we're seeing that they're watching this on the TV, and without it, that scene really feels rushed in a way. It feels a little unnaturally fast because they're like going boing 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 boing. This, with the added scenes, do feel like this is taking a bit of time within the world, so that it's not just like, oh, here's this couple, they're watching TV. The guy goes to like cook some burgers on the grill, and the one girl gets killed, and then he comes back, sees her dead, and then gets killed, and then sees her dead, calls the cops, then gets killed, and then play chopsticks. With this other one, with the interspersion of those cut scenes, or those cut-in scenes, sorry, it expands the time of the opening. It generates a little bit more atmosphere, I believe, and makes the kind of the killings happen. And I don't know if the term more earned is kind of wrong, but it felt more movie like in a way. And this the other felt more rushed and not just disjointed, but didn't flow as well, in my opinion. I don't know. Anyways, the other part is when they're at the party and this couple are watching TV, and apparently this guy brought videos to watch, and he's all into the video, and you see that it's kind of a smutty film where girls getting naked and things like that, and you see him enjoying it. In the other part, you see him enjoying that, but you don't really see what he's looking at and talking about, and so you kind of get like this separation of like, okay, what is he watching? I'm curious. With the cut-ins, you actually see what he's watching, you see his reactions, and it feels a lot more natural, in my opinion. Okay, maybe I'm trying to justify the added tits to the movie. I mean, you know, I'm a man. I'm a man. I have simple likes, and it's like I'd rather them be there than them not be there. Like I said, but anyways, so maybe I'm just trying to justify it in my mind, but it feels better. Like I said, outside of that one where the sauna scene where it just cuts in for no reason, no context. That's the only time that it detracts. And for me, my overall enjoyment is a little bit higher because of that. So 3 out of 5 with 2.5 out of 5 without the movie just is very average. There's outside of like 1 or 2 scenes, there's just nothing to like phone home with, and there's really nothing that you can say, well, at least there was. So yeah, outside of that, just a 2.5 out of 5. My overall impression of the movie is a 2.5 out of 5. It's a very average movie, which has an interesting story behind it. And I think that it's still a worthwhile watch, especially knowing the context of the movie. And it might be a fun thing to have, like, you're going to have a horror night, and you might say, hey, let's watch both of these so we can have a nice little discussion, rag on the other one, rag on the first one, whatever. It's kind of an interesting piece of history, too. And kind of shows, like, one of the dilemmas of filmmaking is because maybe not so much nowadays, but distribution was a big thing because that's how you were going to make your money, was to get those theaters to show your film, get people to watch. And so, yeah, you kind of had to make sure that you made it certain ways to get that distribution. And so I think it definitely deserves mention because of just its sort of unique place in history. But other than that, it's pretty average slasher. So moving on to average, the first average with the scenes is going to be a 2.3 out of 5, which is, not really that great. And the ones without is just a 1.9, which is once you kind of get below 2.2, it's kind of telling that the movie may not be that great. And like I said, it's a pretty average movie. And speaking of runtimes and stuff, holy cow, this episode is taking forever too. But it's just interesting because of the story behind this, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Plus, I reviewed Graduation Day, and it's kind of interesting. So, yeah, if the movie didn't have this kind of story behind it, maybe it'd be forgotten, or at least very, very little talked about. So it's an interesting thing altogether. A movie that's more interesting because of the stories around it than necessarily because of the actual content of the movie. So there you have it. Night Screams. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. And remember to blah blah, rate, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. And thank you for watching another episode of the 31 Nights of Halloween Horror. I'm pretty sure no one's watching by now, because my god, we're probably like 18 minutes into this thing. Anyways, and so until next time, remember to stay scary, Internet. And as always, to boob or not to boob, that is the question. And for me, the answer always is to boob. But thank God no one's watching, because this is kind of embarrassing. But seriously, if you got to make that decision, always to boob, always to boob. Sorry. Ah!